What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com, and I am here with my big fights for the month upcoming. We had January, we had February, we had March, but now it's time for April, and there is a lot of big stuff coming up this month. Honestly, I could have probably put 20 fights for this, but I've chosen 5, and I've decided to mix it up a little bit. I have a PFL fight, I have a Cage Warriors fight, and I have 3 fights from the UFC. I wanted more from the UFC, but we will go with that anyway, because I think, you know, there's a lot going on this month. There's some good Octagon cards as well. I'm sure there's a lot going on over in probably One and Risen and the whole lot of that, but I think there's some real stuff that in a few years I think we look back on and we think, oh, that was a turning point in some of these divisions. That was a fun fight. That was a meaningful fight. And those are the type of ones I've picked out today, more so than any. And let's start off with the PFL. And again, the PFL has changed a little bit, so it's interesting. I have a whole show coming up with a PFL primer. It'll either be already out at this stage or it'll be out in the next probably 24 hours after that this week. And there are a boatload of fights. So if you want to hear about all of those fights, that's where you go, and I'll have previews every week for that as well. But I think, and I'll tell you which fight I'm going for here in a second, but I think we all need this year, and I've been doing it because I've been covering all the PFL, but if you're not a PFL watcher, I think this is the year you give it a chance. Let's see how this format works. Everyone was crying out for straight knockout. Everyone hated the old format and all. And I kind of liked it, but we have a new format now, and it changes things a lot, I think, because fighters before that maybe were saving themselves for the next round and fought to a decision and things like that. You can't afford to do that anymore. You have to go for it when it's straight knockout. We all know, in anyone over on this side of the pond who watches the FA Cup or anything like that, or the Champions League, those matches are better because, you know, it's the sun doesn't rise tomorrow type of thing. So that's the case with these, and I think the fighters, maybe sometimes you see that, you know, don't always do that. Maybe we'll have to do it this year. So I'm interested to see what the PFL looks like. And if I were to, you know, we're talking about fights to look forward to in the month of April. I think events to look forward to, well, obviously if we some, especially one probably card of the year in the UFC. I think for the PFL, this is kind of their time to shine. You know, this is the season format, the tournament format, time to shine. Now we'll have the Champion Series later on in the year, but here we go with this. And the fight I'm going for is happening on the 18th of April, and it's Impa Kasanganay against Fabian Edwards. And there's a few reasons why I've gone for this. Obviously, both lads, you know, coming off of maybe not the best year of their career. Obviously, they had a lot of success before. Fabian, like twice, has gotten to the mountaintop, not quite getting there. Obviously, same has happened to Kasanganay, but he has obviously managed to become a champion at one stage. But this is at middleweight now as well. Obviously, a move down for Kasanganay. He's fought there before, and you know, Fabian has been kind of outside of Johnny Eblen, who's not in this format, has been probably the guy there. You know, he's been probably the consensus number 2 in that division for a while now. Maybe that's changing. There's another few guys coming up as well, the likes of Dalton Rasta and others like that as well. But go with me here for a second. If there was ever a time to shine, this is it for Fabian Edwards. And for Impa Kasanganay, you know, a guy who has a lot of stuff in his life. You know, he goes to Harvard, and I've interviewed him a few times, and he's a great interview, but like, he goes biking around the place as well. Like, sometimes you're thinking, like, is MMA as important to you as other people? But then you hear him talk about it. It's like, you have to live life, and I train just as much as everyone else. And I always find guys like that, or people who travel around and don't stay in one camp, very, very interesting to see if it can be done another way. Let's put it that way. And this fight is very, very interesting as well because of what I said a minute ago. Like, you could argue that both of these guys are two of the most intelligent fighters in the world, but sometimes you could mistake that for being safe. And sometimes it is being safe. Sometimes you're not mistaken. And sometimes that is it. But in this format, there's something is going to have to give. And this being one of those fights, you know, this is the headliner, I believe, in April 18th, one of the, you know, the third event of the year. But again, we're still starting things out, I suppose, with this new format. I'd be very interested to see how this fight looks, because if, and another part of this as well is like, look what happened to Leon Edwards a couple of weeks ago. And Fabian now has, sometimes gyms like to kind of ebb and flow, and lads are at the very top, and then everyone is going together, and then they drop down a bit, and everyone drops down together. We've seen it throughout the years, and if that happens to Fabian without touching gold in his career, I think it'll be very, very unfortunate, because he's such a talented guy. And again, I'll reiterate this: can this format help a guy like Fabian? I think Fabian's biggest feature throughout the years is he hasn't been able to let it go, to let loose, to fight like the sun doesn't rise tomorrow. And do you not have to in this format? I think you do. I think you do have to. And if he comes in with that mindset, like, there are very few lads who are as good as Fabian Edwards. But the thing about it is, Impa Kasanganay might be one of those guys that has every bit as good as Fabian Edwards. I think, like, as well, for Fabian, like, that, that second brother syndrome type of thing, when, the fact that kind of Leon has fallen off now, maybe could he use that as like a motivation? Like, this is not happening to me. I'm the younger guy. I'm still on that climb. I haven't reached that yet. And this is the opportunity. You have 3 fights ahead of you. You win all of these 3 fights and you're getting there. And the thing about this fight is that we'll obviously talk about it more in the in what is it, 3 weeks time or 2.5 weeks time. The technical aspect of it, like, I love when 2 guys who are very technical fighters go in there against each other, because both of them normally back that technique over the other guy. And this is not your one guy's going to be attacking, one guy's going to be countering. These are both guys who like to throw out their jab and their backhand and their kicks and straight kickboxing. You could see maybe Kasanganay going for a takedown in there as well. Fabian has been taken down in the past, but I think this is just going to be a good technical fight. And if we get a bit of both guys opening up, I think it could be really good. And the reason I picked this fight is I hope it's going to be really good. I hope it's going to open up. I hope we have a great season this year in PFL. Because you know what? I think I said at the start of the year on one of my previous shows, like, I feel like 2025, and it has been so far, it's going to be a really good year for fights. We've had some, like, UFC London last week wasn't amazing, but, some of the pay-per-view shows, and, like, this year, I don't know, last year wasn't great. This year with, PFL on the move, kind of new formats everywhere, with the UFC's new a deal coming up. We have a lot, even say like in Cage Warriors, we have a load of lads who are on the brink and a lot of unbelievable prospects over there at the moment. This year is like a big year for MMA, a moving year for MMA, I think. And if the PFL can join in on that, it could be a huge year for the PFL as well. Because people, I'll say it again, people need to give it a chance this year. Let it get going. And if Kasanganay and Edwards could be a really good fight, I think that would help a lot. So that's my number one, my first fight for this year. PFL 3 on the 18th. But PFL have 2 cards for that as well, and they're very, very good, and a lot of very, very good fights there as well. Second fight, I think the next 2 fights are my 2 most anticipated fights. And they're both from UFC 314. And we go one at a time. So the first fight I'm going for is it has to be Paddy Pimblett versus Michael Chandler. I am fascinated by this fight. Like, this is your old school. I was watching this thing. UFC put it up. Maybe it wasn't the other day, but it came up on my YouTube algorithm anyway. And it was moments. What was it? Moments that live in our head in the UFC. And it was just this 20-minute video of random moments, like Marab wearing the red jacket of Sean O'Malley. And then there was like Rampage knocking down the door. And, just literally one could be 2013, one could be 2025, one could be 2000, all over the place. And I kind of thought to myself, we don't really have that many moments like that anymore. Okay, the Marab one was, but it was pretty recently. But when I was looking at these fights, I was like, this is one of those fights that I feel like something is going to happen on it that in 10 years' time, when you look back on it, you'll remember. Someone will just say, here, do you remember Paddy Pimblett versus Michael Chandler? And you'll be like, oh yeah, Jesus, that's when, Paddy caught him in a flying armbar and Michael Chandler slammed him and knocked him out, or, Paddy caught him with an armbar. It's going to be something, man. Paddy danced in his, broken arm. Something's going to happen. I just have a feeling. And do you know what's weird as well? And I don't know if it's just me or not. Maybe it's my memory has just gotten worse. There's loads of fights that thing as well. Dan Hooker versus Dustin Poirier. These boys went mental in that fight, and I had no recollection of that. If I had watched it back in the whole fight, I'd be like, yeah, I did, I remember. But if you ask me blind now what happened in that fight, I'd be like, no idea. And that's more memory than anything those lads do. But I feel like sometimes some fights happen. I spoke about Impa Kasanganay. Look at him versus Jackie and Buckley. Unfortunately for Impa, but that's one we'll never forget. That's a moment we'll never forget. And I just have a sneaking, longing feeling that this is going to happen in Paddy Pimblett versus Michael Chandler. And Chandler, I think at this stage of his career, 4 losses in his last 5, only beaten Tony Ferguson, against Paddy Pimblett, who's won freaking how many in a row? 7 or 8 in a row. And won all these fights in the UFC. Obviously, 6 fights now in the UFC. They probably shouldn't be fighting each other. Let's be honest. But I'm glad they made this fight. Because, Michael Chandler was he was in the rankings, and Paddy was a good bit down the rankings, and it's him. Paddy, this fight is made for him to win and climb the rankings. So it makes a lot of sense on that. But you know what's very interesting? I have spoken to a good few people, and on camera and off camera, and I think Kane and Cochran picked Paddy, which is funny because he's they're the opposing gyms and they have a bit of a back and forth. But every single person I've talked to, apart from him, has picked Michael Chandler. Every single person has picked Michael Chandler. I know you can hear the dogs there barking in the background, but they're picking Michael Chandler too. Everyone is picking him, and it's, to me, I understand it in a way. If you were to pick Michael Chandler, I understand it if you were to pick Paddy Pimblett, right? Everyone to be picking Michael Chandler, I think is mad. And now I've come on this show before and I've spoken about Paddy Pimblett. I've been covering Paddy since he was literally a boy, and I know the issues Paddy has as a fighter. I know everything about him. Let's be honest. But I think what Paddy has done over the last few years has been amazing. He has improved an awful lot as a fighter. His defensive striking is so much better. His offensive striking is worlds ahead of where it used to be. He was always a beast on the ground, always brilliant jiu-jitsu. Look, will that striking stand up against the very, very best in the world? That remains to be seen. I would still have major questions over that, and probably the answer to them would be no. But the next question is Michael Chandler a major, unbelievable striker? And I would probably say no to that as well, although he can be good at times. The other thing I would say with this one as well, and I don't want to get into technical breakdown, but here's the last thing I'll say about that part of it. Paddy Pimblett's 2 losses, Soddenbach and Nad Naramani, 2018, 2017. Now, it's a long time ago. What's that, 7 years ago, 8 years ago? Both of those were because he got wrestled, right? Now, he's a 3rd loss as well, but that was, early in his career. That was in 2014. He was, he barely had hair on his face back then. I wonder if Michael Chandler wrestle him. Chandler probably should wrestle him. But the thing is, and you have to respect Chandler, he came into the UFC. He wanted to be known as a UFC fighter. He wanted people to love him. And he just come across the cage and kickboxed with everyone and got insane. And he'll do that again with Paddy. That's why they were lining him up with McGregor and all of that. But he will do that again with Paddy. So if someone takes someone down, I think it'll be Paddy probably trying to take him down. But I just think this is going to be madness. I think the talk coming up to it, I don't think it's going to be shit talk, but I think it's going to be fun. I think the press conference is going to be fun. We've seen bits and pieces already. But yeah, this is just a really great fight. I absolutely cannot wait for it. So that's my my number 2. My number 3 then from the same card, and I'm not going for the main event here. I'm not going for it. I'm going for Yair versus Pitbull. This is a fight that you wouldn't have, and I love when these fights happen, you wouldn't have even thought of it. Like, you would have thought, Pitbull is over in Bellator, maybe he's going to fight in PFL, maybe he could fight Brendan Loughnane, or, maybe he could go up to fight Rabadanov or something like that. But then you're like, oh, is Pitbull going to sign? Is he going to sign? We're not even thinking about matchups. And then not only does he sign, but when it's announced that he signed, he's also fighting Yair Rodriguez at the same time. And this is just such a brilliant fight because, look, Yair's coming off a couple of losses, Ortega and Volkanovski. He wants to get back up there. He's highly ranked. And for Patricio, at 37 years of age, to come into the UFC, he can't waste any time. He needs to do what Michael Chandler did type of thing and hit it, hit the road running. But I don't think he's going to exactly fight like Michael Chandler, but he needs to win fights to get to the very, very top. And can he do it? I don't know. But this is so exciting because you will see a lot and everything will be found out in this fight. Everything will be found out. Like, if Yair wins, right, it's one thing. But if Patricio wins and he puts himself in those rankings, right at the very top, I'll put it up here in a second, but right towards the very top of those rankings. Yair at the moment is ranked number 5, so he'll probably go in as number 5. Like, that changes the whole world right then, because everything we knew, like, Topuria is the champion at the moment, but he won't be champion in a second. On this card it'll be Lopez versus Volkanovski. The winner of that will emerge. And at the press conference afterwards, Patricio, if he wins, is going to be calling for it. Like, so this whole featherweight division, as I said, the world changes sometimes. This whole featherweight division in one night could look very, very different. And it will. It's not could. It will look very different because Topuria has given up the belt. Because we're going to have a quote-unquote new champion. Maybe Volkanovski, he's a bit of an old champion, but you're getting what I'm going with. And we're going to possibly have a brand new contender as well, a contender that wasn't even thought of up until a couple of weeks ago. And that's so intriguing. That's so interesting that can happen all in one night. And, part of that as well is how fun this fight could be. Like, if Patricio goes in there, holds his ground, walks Yair down like he does an awful lot, or waits for that counter and hits him with that big shot and hurts him. Like, it's again a whole new world. And Patricio has been in there with the likes of AJ McKee and other young, good guys as well. So it's not like he hasn't fought to that level. He fought Adam Burrows, who's a very, very good striker, and Pedro Carvalho, and he fought Michael Chandler, back in the day, and Vincent Henderson and all. So, like, this is not a guy coming in from another organization who hasn't been in there with top guys. He absolutely is. And for Yair Rodriguez, it's him to prove that he's a step too much. For Patricio, it's to make that world shine. So let's see if it can happen. I can't wait for that. Absolutely can't wait for it. Right, the next fight I want to look at, I'm going to finish out with a UFC fight, but the Cage Warriors fight is the next one I want to look at, and it's Cage Warriors 188 on the 26th, and it's James Sheehan against Justin Burlinson in the main event. And you might be saying, Shawnee, are you a little bit biased here? Are you a little bit biased? And I am a little bit biased, but at the same time, you look at this fight, right, and it gives you something that you don't often get in mixed martial arts anymore. And what's that? This is a raucous home crowd. This is an event that will deliver. This is a main event between two guys who always put it on the line. And, in an arena in the RDS, which has become, the home of Cage Warriors now, and it just has everything good about it, right? Everything good about it. Like, you look at, I don't know if people know James Sheehan or not. Like, if you're listening to this and you're in the US, maybe you don't, right? But James Sheehan is 8-3 in his career, and those 3 losses were to Matthew Bonner in his debut Matthew Bonner became Cage Warriors champion very soon after this. He lost to Ian Gary. I don't think I need to explain to anyone who Ian Gary is. And he lost to Oban Elliott. Those are the 3 losses of his career. The first 2 of them are in his first 3 fights. He started off his career at 1 and 2. And like the guys he fought afterwards, like O'Mill Brown, he's the number 1 contender now. He just won last weekend. Jamie Richardson, a former title challenger as well. Ali Sanatani, who just won last weekend. Daniel Conrad for the title. Really, really good fighter. And then for Justin Burlinson, the other side of it, like he's 9 and 2. Very, very good record. But he has gotten, he was in the contender series. It didn't work out for him. Ended up coming back and fighting Reese McKee. Very nearly got to finish and then got finished by Reese McKee, and probably the fight of the year over in Cage Warriors. Beat Daniel Skibinski, as I said, Jamie Richardson, as I mentioned him earlier on, has fought guys like Josh Plant and others as well. A very, very good amateur record. I think he only lost 1 fight in 17 or something as an amateur. This guy's an absolute beast. Like, he should be in the UFC, but it just hasn't worked out for him. And James Sheehan is on that road to the UFC, and now he has this massive hometown fight. He's from that Team Rhino gym as well. If people don't know it, it's the one where Paul Redmond came out of and Neil Seary came out of. Really, really good gym. Fighting, against the likes of SBG and others in Ireland throughout the years. And he is their next guy, but a guy who has just come on leaps and bounds in his career. And Again, I'm a little bit biased here towards the Irish event. Now, we won't say the Irish guy because I'll pick down the middle who I think is going to win when I do my picks and everything. But like, in a world where we have a load of Apex events where they are, boring, where we have even UFC London last weekend, it was so overpriced. Someone made a great point that like the price of those tickets, coupled with the fact the card wasn't great, just made people absolutely hate it. I was watching a vlog, who's Tom Aspinall, and even he was giving out about it. You could see the people in the crowd. I don't know, it's just the prices of those events these days, just, and then when you look at it, say a big Octagon event or a KSW event, it's just different. As a fly lands on my microphone. But this one, like, cheap enough tickets. A lot of people obviously in Dublin, it's only a taxi down the road, or your mammal dropping you in or whatever. There's something special about this. I don't think I can actually go to this event. Unfortunately, I wish I could, but these events are special. I saw my guy Scott Langdon over who works for Octagon saying, if you're unhappy what happened with the big prices of these UFC tickets and all like that, go to your local events, because these local events are special. Because you see a guy, like I just mentioned, Oban Elliott, Ian Gary, and other people. Like, you see these guys at these events. You're not seeing scrubs. You're not seeing bad fighters. You are seeing the next level of UFC fighters. Like the Cage Warriors cards from the last couple of weeks were amazing. Like the likes of Nick Bagley and Joanny Scott, and Sean Clancy is fighting this month as well. This guy is a beast over in Glasgow. I was going to put that as one of my ones as well, but I went biased. I went Irish with it. But this guy is a beast. You're seeing some great fighters in this. So I love fights like this in arenas like this with crowds like this. Like, MMA is not just about the UFC or PFL or the big boys. It's also about like the up and comers and green grass, the shoots of MMA, so I'll always roar for those lads. I'll always shout for those lads, and I'll do that here again. James Sheehan against Justin Burlinson, an absolutely fantastic fight. So that's 4 fights. The last fight I'm going for, I've gone for this there. I could have picked a number of fights here, but I love this fight. It is on April 26th as well, so you can watch Cage Warriors first, and then you can watch the UFC, and it's Jamahal Hill against Khalil Rountree. And I just think this is going to be box office. I was so impressed with Khalil Rountree against Pereira. I've always liked Khalil Rountree, to be honest. But I don't think many people thought he had that performance in him. He did so well. Okay, he succumbed late, But he was on a great run before that. Now it's time to bounce back. And for Jamahal Hill, at 33 years of age, lost 2 in a row, it's also time for him to bounce back. A bit of a 50-50 performance against Prochazka, but that's not good enough at this level. And he'll probably acknowledge that himself. He views himself as the best in the world. He views himself as a champion. And in a division where Pereira has just lost, where Pereira will either get a rematch or go to heavyweight, and he maybe even go to heavyweight if he gets the rematch after it. This is wide open for someone to emerge in the light heavyweight division. And could it be one of these guys would win here and maybe win in their next fight? I think it could be. But like, aside from that, this is the one that I love the matchup on, because like, I think Jamahal Hill can wrestle, and he's not opposed to it, but I think he will strike. And we know Khalil Rountree will strike as well. Oh, a spoiler alert for the betting show, but I'll be betting the under in this, whatever it is. This is 5 rounds. There's no way, famous last words, but there's no way this can go 5 rounds. Absolutely no way. I love this fight. I think both of them are going to lay it all on the line. I think someone's probably getting knocked out. And imagine how crazy it would be. Like, I was one of the people who predicted Jamahal Hill would become a champion. I didn't think it'd be as early as it did. But like, because it came so early, you're thinking, this guy's just going to get better and better. Because again, he looks a bit green. He always has looked a bit green. But like, if he was to lose to Khalil Rountree and get knocked out, which someone's getting knocked out in this fight, there'd be 3 knockout losses in a row. What does that mean for a guy who's formerly champion? This is such a big fight for Jamahal Hill. Like a massive fight for Jamahal Hill. Look, and every fight's a big fight for everyone, but huge for him. And I think if you're Khalil Rountree, I think it's massive in a different way, because I think if Khalil Rountree wins this, he's gone close with Alex Pereira on a great win streak and then beats Jamahal Hill, I think people view him as a very, very much a top level light heavyweight after that. And I think he'd be very close to getting back to a title shot again. But again, the rock'em sock'em robots nature of this fight that it could be. Well, maybe not even that, but I just think there'll be wild exchange. Like, I can see parts of the fight where Jamahal Hill is on the outside, like he does a lot, and kind of coming in with his shots. But Roundtree's going to answer him, and they're just gonna lay it down in the middle of the cage. Like, I cannot wait for this fight. I think it could be. I think it could be a fight of the year candidate, maybe, but I don't know if it will last that long, but let's see. But there's a lot of fun stuff even on that card, like Anthony Smith against Minyan Zhang. I think that could be a quick knockout, but I like Zhang an awful lot, and there's a lot of cool stuff. Volkanovski and Lopez, obviously a massive fight. John Silva hopefully beating the shit out of Bryce Mitchell in there as well. Jim Miller and Chase Hooper. This card on UFC 314 is absolutely huge. A lot of other fights from the Dublin card as well. Like over in Octagon, we have Cartwright against Severino. That's a really, really good fight as well. And, for PFL, there's a lot of good stuff. Jason Jackson against Koreshkov. Mavlidis fighting Jeremy Kennedy. There's a lot of good stuff. Kieran Clark against Kasimov. What are they? Joint like 26-1 or something like that. Brilliant fight. Ali Taleb is fighting. Just some absolutely brilliant stuff this month. J. Casey against Rabadanov. That was one that was probably 6th on my list, maybe. What a great fight, and so much more this week. I could stay here for a week talking about fights, but that's the show for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Let me know in the comment section below which fight this month are you mostly looking forward to, the month of April. Let me know which fight you're looking forward to. But from me, that is it. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com. I'll see you all next time.